part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
What's good, everybody, and welcome into the first episode of the Full 40 Podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm your host, and I go by the name of Taylor Vanderbilt. First and foremost, I am so excited to be here to talk some college basketball with you guys. The season just started a few days ago. We've already had some great games, some standout performances, and I can already tell that this year is just going to be one of those really, really good years. I think there's a lot of good teams. I think there's a lot of great players. I think there's a lot of teams that aren't good right now that will be good. And same thing goes for the players as well. So, enough with the small talk. Without further ado, man, let's get into it. The Full 40 Podcast is live. So, as we all know, the college basketball season tipped off on Tuesday day. But there was a lot of games throughout the day, Tuesday, all culminating in the Champions Classic in Madison Square Garden on Tuesday night. I was actually afforded the opportunity to be in the building for the Champions Classic, and that is the first thing that I want to dive into and talk about. It was a great event. The energy was electric. You could feel it kind of building, especially during the Michigan State-Kansas game. You could feel it building up to, I guess, what was the marquee game of the night in Duke and Kentucky, and it being Coach K's last game there in Madison Square Garden. So it's actually the one I want to talk about first. Duke and Kentucky, it was a great game. I thought both teams looked more polished to me than I expected them to be. Normally, especially at the Champions Classic, most teams don't come out like Zion and RJ and Cam Reddish did a few years ago. Most times these teams are still trying to figure it out and gel together because there's young guys and freshmen and things of that nature that still, this is their first experience on this stage. But last night I didn't see that. From the Duke perspective, it seemed like they got into everything and kind of did what they wanted to do on their end of the court. And then from the Kentucky perspective, you could definitely see where even though they have newcomers, the maturity of the newcomers as they are transfers really helped them to be a lot farther along than they normally are at this stage. Still some gelling to do for both teams, but I think they looked a lot more polished than I expected them to be. But with that being said, the players in the game were absolutely astonishing. I'm saying they looked the part, they played the part. Most notably, Paolo Banchero was a man amongst boys on the court. And no one that is 6'10", 250 pounds should be moving with the fluidity that he moves with. He was clearly the best player on the floor. And Duke was a different team with him on the floor. When he left with cramps, I know they made a solid small run to kind of lengthen the lead a little bit. But with Paolo on the court, you just had a feeling, and I could kind of feel it from the vibe in the arena, that it was really Duke's game to lose with him on the court. The moment I think he left, it was the moment that Kentucky fans started kind of getting back into the game and things of that nature. And then subsequently, when Keels got his cramps and Wendell Moore, it was kind of the same as well. But for Paolo, he looked every bit of what we thought he was going to look like. You have a lot of times when guys come, whether it's from high school to college or college to the pros, and they have a lot of hype on them, they might not live up to it. And it's no fault of their own, just simply, well, I guess it is some of their fault, but it's simply just, fit, or, the game was faster than they thought, or they just weren't, they weren't as good of a player in their situation. But Paolo proved that he is, I know that ESPN and Jonathan Cavoni have him as the number 2 NBA draft prospect. I personally think he is number 1. I think he should be the number 1 pick based off what I saw. Alongside Paolo, though, and I've already mentioned him once, Trevor Keels personally, though, impressed me the most. And I know that's kind of hard to think about giving all the praise that I just gave Paolo, but he definitely impressed me the most. I think his first and foremost, his strength, both on the offensive and defensive side, was something that we knew he had coming out of high school, but it's something that we weren't ready to see yet. We didn't know that he had that in his arsenal at this stage, at the level elite level that he does. Also, his just pure heart, man. I love watching guys who just have fun when they play, aren't afraid of anything, are willing to give everything that they have in order to get the W, and that's exactly what Trevor Keels did. Alongside the fact that he can shoot it, he can run offense. I think every team that wins a national championship has to have that guy that's like a Swiss Army knife type guy to win, and I believe he can be that. At points during the game, he took the hardest defensive or guard spot in taking Ty Washington out of the game, essentially. On the offensive side, he ran offense as the primary ball handler, but he also played off the ball and did both of those things very, very well. So I really do think that Trevor Keels is the key to Duke really, really winning a national championship. I know that Paolo is obviously the best player on the team, and as he goes, they go. But I really do think Trevor Keels is the biggest piece in terms of them winning a national championship. So overall, I think Duke showed they could be a national contender. Personally, if they consistently rebound and play tough defense over long stretches of the game, they should most definitely play deep into March, make it to the Final Four in New Orleans, and have a real shot of winning the national championship. On the other side, UK showed me that they will be a good team. They are a good team. They are a good team. Excuse me. They will be a great team. I say will be because it's clear that there's still some gelling to do. Now I know most of y'all are thinking, and probably thought this when I said it earlier. Is it not normal for UK to have to gel when the season starts? And that is true. But this year's a little bit different. For starters, this team isn't your average Kentucky team. They're a more veteran team. Anytime you can move your leading scorer from the previous year to the bench, you have something. And Cal definitely has something to work with. They just have some work to do, but not much. 3 guys from Kentucky really impressed me last night. And ironically, all 3 of these guys are newcomers, but they're not freshmen. So former West Virginia big guy Oscar Tshiebwe was the first one. He looked great on the floor. He really handled his own against what I think is a top 5 college front line. Personally, I think it's a top 2 college front line, right up there with Gonzaga. He finished well around the rim. He was a machine on the glass. He ended up with 12 offensive rebounds in the game, and I really do think that he single-handedly kept them in the game in the first half with his offensive rebounding. I think a lot of the second shots, I think Kentucky really stayed in it off second shots, and he was a huge part of that. Along with him, and a big recipient of a lot of those second chance opportunities, or a few of those anyway, was Kellen Grady. He's a really good scoring guard out of Davidson. The one thing that struck me immediately about him that you might not have been able to see on television was his shooting stroke. It's purer than the waters of Lake Minnetonka. Like, I truly believe as he gets more comfortable in this offense, you'll really see him turn it on as a scorer. You could see that he really always had a scoring mindset. He was always ready to shoot, always ready to drive, always ready to score. I remember there was a possession where Duke was playing really good defense, but you could just tell he was antsy to get a shot off, and he was just ready anytime he came around a screen, anytime he found a slight opening, he was ready to pull it. So I'm excited to see where his kind of growth goes within the Kentucky program, especially him being a 17-point per game scorer the last few seasons. I think he can, do that in the SEC and really kind of, make a name for himself and make him carve out a really nice role here on this Kentucky team. The last of the 3 is the one who impressed me the most, and that's Sahvir Wheeler. The Georgia transfer showed me why he was top 5 in the country in assists. He showed everybody that as he dished out 10 last night. He was absolutely slicing and dicing Duke on the pick and roll. I believe to start off the second half, I want to say he got into the paint 3 or 4 consecutive trips down the floor, and they scored on I believe all 3 or 4. So he was definitely handling the ball and making his presence felt. I also believe that his toughness and what looked to be an improved shooting stroke is definitely going to help Kentucky in the long run. He was, to me, the only UK guard that was consistently attacking and getting in the paint and creating good looks. I truly think that if him, Oscar Tshiebwe, and Kellen Grady all continue to kind of show this growth, that they will end up being a team that you don't want to see in March. And as I said before, they are older than your UK teams that you're used to, but they still have good young talent like Ty Washington. I think they'll find their rhythm, and when that happens, watch out. As for the first game of the night, Kansas and Michigan State was one of those where there was clearly a better team, but the lesser talented team was simply just playing harder, and thus they were staying in the game. Obviously, you could probably guess which team is which, but I want to dive into the more talented team first, and that's the Kansas Jayhawks. To me, they are a legit national championship contender. They are that anomaly, which is a veteran-led blue blood team. They have upperclassmen just littered throughout the lineup, with Remy Martin and Abaji, Mitch Lightfoot. They're just older guys on a blue blood team, which is just rare to see. But I want to talk a little bit about Ochai Abaji. He looked fantastic. He finished with 29 points. He had some thunderous dunks as well. He looked very comfortable shooting the ball. He also looked very comfortable working from the perimeter. On the flip side, on the defensive side of the court, he was, a very strong defender. A really solid two-way wing that can do some damage. I think he would really be a good player at the next level. But you could definitely see why he was a Wooden Award candidate, a preseason candidate, among other things, and why he's probably going to be Big 12 Player of the Year, in my opinion. So I loved what I saw from him. Alongside Abaji is another senior who's also a newcomer. That's Remy Martin. As a fan of Remy's game, I've always been a fan of Remy's game since he was at Arizona State. I just love guards that are kind of electric, don't mind shooting, don't mind, just are fearless, essentially. And that's exactly what Remy was. So I was excited to see him and what he could do within the structure of a Bill Self offense. It's a lot different, obviously, than what he was under at Arizona State with Hurley and the run and gun style and the kind of we're just going to try to outscore teams ordeal. So I was interested to see that. And personally, I thought he was great. He didn't score till the second half, and I guess that normally can be an aspersion on, whatever kind of game he had. But I thought he showed maturity as a point guard in the first half for this team. Outside of, a turnover here or there, I thought he really was mature. He got them into their sets. He wasn't taking rushed or bad shots, a ton of rushed or bad shots as he did at Arizona State. Just really, negative possessions. He wasn't the catalyst for a lot of those. And so I really like what I saw. And then once he got to the second half, outside of a bad shot or two, I really like what he did scoring wise. So I really like what he adds to the squad. It's definitely easy to see why they are obviously again the favorite to win the Big 12, which in my opinion could be the best conference in basketball, college basketball this year, when it's all said and done. So.
Hey everyone, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. Backed by popular demand, I'm excited to let you know that new episodes of the Hyman Podcast will drop every other Monday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're going to continue the conversations we started last season and keep having those hard conversations. There is so much in store for you this season, and I'm excited to share it with you. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single moment. The Hyman Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Now to Michigan State. Per usual, Izzo has put together another very disciplined and hardworking team. As I've already stated, that's basically what kept them in the game in the first half, is really just their activity on both ends of the floor. Obviously, it wasn't enough, but they did show flashes to me of what they could be. I was very impressed with how active the bigs were between Bingham, Gabe Brown, Marble, and Hall, which Marble and Gabe Brown impressed me the most. But all four of them I thought were very, very active. They always played very long and very strong. And they weren't, afraid to kind of mix it up or really get in there and battle. So I really love that. I really think that this front line will just improve. And I'm interested to see. I think they were picked sixth to finish sixth in the Big Ten. And I'm interested to see if this isn't one of those teams that just kind of slowly rises as the year goes. The other person or player that caught my eye was A.J. Hoggard. His energy on both ends was amazing. He can flat out get to the bucket. I truly believe that this is one of those Izzo teams that it's going to be kind of blah early, but with guys like Hoggard and Gabe Brown, I really think that they could end up being one of those teams that makes a Sweet 16 run that no one saw coming. Especially if someone like Max Christie can play up to his potential. He had a pretty bad game. I would say I would say for myself that it was a pretty bad game on his part. But he's only gonna improve. And like I said, if he can play up to his potential, and they can consistently play as hard as they did last or Tuesday night, I definitely think they could become a problem not only in the Big Ten but nationally as well. So very interested to see that. But yeah, as I said, man, Tuesday, the Champions Classic, amazing games, amazing atmosphere. Definitely recommend it to any college basketball fan, especially if it's in the Mecca. So it was awesome. But there was some more college basketball, and other college basketball games went on last night, or Tuesday night rather. There was a lot of surprising outcomes, I guess you could say. And obviously we have to start with the one that everyone's talking about, and that is the Virginia Cavaliers. So if you haven't heard, they did lose to the Navy Midshipmen. It was probably the biggest opening day shocker of, I would say, any of the games. Navy absolutely shot the lights out against a Virginia team that looked like they clearly haven't gelled yet or figured out what or who they are just yet. Obviously, I don't think that they will continue to play as poor of defense as they showed in the first half. Obviously, the second half, they came out and they looked more like the Virginia we're used to seeing. I also don't think that their guards will play as bad as they played again. I think between Kihei Clark and Franklin, they were combined like 3 of 10 or 3 of 12 from 3. So just a really just bad showing and tough showing. And the thing I'll say about this, it's early. And with a team like Virginia, they have a history of kind of doing this. Lost to San Francisco, I believe it was last year or the year before, early in the season. Then I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago, they lost like a stretch of 3 or 4 games in a row. And then went on to make a deep tournament run. So, so UVA isn't the only team to lose. I'm sorry, they were the only team to lose, but they weren't one of the only ones to suffer a scare. I don't know why that was so hard to get out, but yes, UVA was the only team to take an L. But a lot of teams faced some scares, and Ohio State was definitely one of those teams. They got all they could handle from the Zips of Akron, which I don't think people talk about that enough. That Akron has one of the coolest, most intriguing names, like mascot team names that you could have, and that's the Zip. I personally loved it. as you might can tell from the fact that I pick them on NCAA basketball as my team all the time, just because I like the logo. But anywho, enough about old video games. But Ohio State got all they could handle from Akron. It basically took a buzzer beater from Zed Key for them to get the win. Offensively, Ohio State looked less than stellar after E.J. Liddell, who had a great game. I believe like 25 points. But they eventually were able to survive it. Same thing with them as I said about Virginia. I think they'll be okay. They have injuries. Guys like Seth Towns are still out. So I definitely think that they will be a better team than the one that we saw on Tuesday night. I just think they have to get guys back. They have to get healthy. They have to find secondary scoring, though. That would be the only thing that I would say, that and just consistently playing hard is going to be kind of the catalyst for how far or not far Ohio State goes this year. So, like I say, opening night is what it is. You can either, overreact or take it with a grain of salt. I choose to take it with a grain of salt and get some more sample size. Next up, we're going to talk about Hofstra, as they were so close to pulling an upset down in Houston, as they had Houston on the ropes. But I personally think they just ran out of gas. I mean, Houston looked fairly sloppy the entire game. They missed easy bunnies. They missed. They turned the ball over, and not the turnovers where you're playing hard and coaches don't mind. These were the ones where it was just dumb things that they were doing. So, but again, let's remember, it's just game one. They did win, and they are still the cream of the crop in the A. Well, I would say they are 1-2 in the AAC with Memphis as well. I definitely see them competing. So I don't foresee them to continue to play this bad. I mean, like I said, when you miss 10 free throws, a slew of missed bunnies, like you're going to be in a tough battle in a tough game. So, but they'll be all right. Like I said, I really think that they just have to clean it up, as Kelvin Sampson said, just clean it up. And he doesn't mind. I also appreciate the fact that he doesn't mind having a game like that to start the year off. He's not angry at his kids that, they might have played down to the level of their competition. He's simply just like, it's game one. We'll figure it out. I dig it. Some other notable scores. Arkansas was actually down at the half against the Bears of Mercer. But they found their footing in the second half and were able to finish them off by the score of 74-61. And one that I don't feel like has been talked about enough, Indiana eked a win out over Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan, they had a really strong comeback in the second half. I think they scored 40-plus points in the second half to come back and make it like a real game. And Indiana was supposed to be then obviously they're not supposed to win the Big Ten or anything like that, but they were supposed to be much, much improved. So either that means Eastern Michigan's a lot better than what I know of, or Indiana's not as good as we thought. Staying in the Big Ten, though, Fred Hoiberg and Nebraska still can't figure out a way to get out of their own way. They took a very, very bad loss to Western Illinois. I don't really know what to say about it. I just think since Fred Hoiberg has left Iowa State, he just hasn't found success. I'm not exactly sure why. I loved those Iowa State teams. I thought that his style of play and style of coaching, he was going to be, Brad Stevens type level in terms of, name anomaly or name recognition, but that just hasn't happened. I think his worst mistake was leaving Iowa State, but yeah, Nebraska basketball, they got to figure it out. I don't understand how you can be a Big Ten team and be this poor. That's just my perspective. I don't think Hoiberg's the answer. He's only won, 12 or 16 games in his tenure there. So, yeah, no, it might be time to go another direction. Keeping it in the Midwest, we're going to go over to Ohio, where Xavier, who was picked to finish third in the Big East, got a scare from Niagara. They were able to hold them off and get a 3-point win, but it was definitely one of those games where the game pressure was on Xavier. the entire time. Niagara was right there, just nipping at their heels, and I don't think at any point they, would have gotten them or actually overtook, the lead or taken the W. But I do think that, it was definitely a game where it was tough the entire game. So a lot of good games, a lot of, interesting matchups with it being the beginning of the season, and a lot of things happening that you don't, normally think about. But alongside all of these great games were also some great individual performances as well. Let's go down to Memphis. Amani Bates and Jalen Duran looked amazing in their opening game in Memphis. They looked active, super active on the both ends of the floor, and both had some highlight-worthy plays, including some very, very, very hard dunks from Jalen Duran. Imani finished with 17 points on 6 of 9 shooting. He made 4 threes. He also had 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and 1 steal. So as you can see, he was definitely, he handled the ball a whole lot. He brought the ball up the court and set up and ran offense. So I really like his versatility. The fact that he has to be in college for 2 years is going to be insane, because next year he is going to be on a whole nother level. So really excited to watch him grow and continue to do that this year. As for Jalen Duran, he had 15 points on 7 of 10 shooting. He had 6 rebounds, 2 assists. He had 5 blocks in the game. I think he ended up with a plus-minus of plus 33. So he played amazing, super active on both sides of the floor. I think he blocked a 3 at one point. So he's really they put on a show, and I'm really excited to see what Memphis can do. I hopefully get a chance to see them in person this season, and see what Imani Bates and Duran really can do. We also talked a little bit about the Razorbacks earlier, but now we're talking about them again, because guard J.D. Note had an impressive 7 steals in one game. Now, I don't know if, you people understand how hard of a feat that is, but 7 steals in one game, people essentially have to be just throwing you a ball. But to get 7 steals is a great game in itself. JD also had 30 points. Now, granted, the competition level was Mercer, and I do think that he might not have been in the game if they would have, played up to their potential the entire game. But to have 30 points and 7 steals, man, that is an insane stat line. But it's not as insane as my next guy. So those are great. Duran, Bates, Note, all great. But let's talk about Chet Holmgren. So a lot of announcers do say the cliche, he can do it all, when you have a guy that maybe makes a play on offense and turns around and makes a play on defense. Chet Holmgren is a guy that can actually do it all. And he did in his first game. In his first game, he set the Gonzaga record for blocks in a game with 7. I think Karnowski had that record before him. And normally, first of all, that's a crazy amount of blocks in a game. And he did a lot of that. He did a good portion of that damage in the first half, which is crazy to me as well. And normally that's a great night for any player, basketball player that's ever walked this earth. 7 blocks in a game is a great night. But as we said, Chet can do it all. He also managed to score 14 points. He grabbed 13 rebounds, and he had 6 assists. Now, we have to also be mindful, as I've said a bunch, we have to be mindful of the competition. But Chet looks primed to live up to his potential. And, as far as the competition goes, don't worry. We will get to see if he can replicate all of these actions very, very, very soon, as they play Texas on Saturday and have one of the toughest schedules in America, one of the toughest schedules that I've seen a team have to start off a season, as they play Duke as in November, as well as UCLA. So really looking forward to seeing what Gonzaga can do, what Chet Holmgren can do with those. And speaking of Texas and Gonzaga, let's to wrap up the show, let's dive in to what we're going to look forward to this weekend in college basketball. First up, I want to talk about the Texas and Gonzaga game. It should be a battle. They're two very, very balanced teams. Texas looks really solid in their opener. The transfer portal also showed up in their opener. As Marcus Carr, Timmy Allen, and Trey Mitchell are all guys that transferred in. Marcus Carr from Minnesota, Timmy Allen from Utah, and Trey Mitchell from UMass. They all played a huge, huge part in the success and in the win for Texas the other night. And I think they're going to play a huge part in success of Texas this season. Texas, to me, is a very veteran team. Just thinking about it, they have Andrew Jones coming back for what I hope to be a great last season for him. I really do. I love his story. I love him as a kid. I think he's awesome and a really good basketball player. Obviously, we already talked about Chet Holmgren on the Gonzaga side, but his teammates are no slouches either. Everyone obviously knows about the mustache man, that being Drew Timme. And I think he just looks to improve on what was a really great season last year. Julian Strother, he looks to be a great scoring threat from the perimeter, as well as a solid defender. I feel like Gonzaga always has a wing that's just, a really solid defender, a really good 3-and-D guy. Zach Norvell was that type of guy. So those two and Chet alongside Rasir Bolton, who will look to push the pace at any stretch, at any time, I think make up a very, very formidable team and make two teams, between the two teams, I think this will be a great game. If you'd asked me a few days ago, my answer would be a lot different than it is now. But I'm picking Gonzaga to win this game. With two guys like Timmy and Chet, it's going to be hard for any team to stop them consistently. Though I do feel that if Texas can have an amazing defensive outing, and I think it will have to be amazing, but I do think Chris Beard is up for that challenge. It would swing in the other direction, but personally I just don't think that they can stop Chet, Drew, and Strother all in one game. So give me Gonzaga on Saturday. Next up, and last and certainly not least, UCLA versus Villanova. This matchup is going to be an interesting one. Personally, I'm not sold on UCLA. I kind of believe they're still riding the wave of last year's tournament. So while I think they'll be good, making them the cream of the crop, number 2 team in the nation, was a little much for me. With that said, UCLA does bring back their entire squad, so the continuity is there. Johnny Juzang's there, Cody Riley's there, Tiger Campbell's back, Jaquez. But at the same time, let's remember that this was the same team who barely made it into the tournament as an 11th seed. So I'm still very skeptical. And as for this game Saturday, they will actually be without Cody Riley, as he looks like he hurt his knee in their previous game, and they're looking to reevaluate that next week. On the Villanova side, again, they look very solid. A Villanova team that you expect. Colin Gillespie, make sure the ball is completely taken care of. Every single starter in their opener touched double digits. And they look like they're gearing up for another March run. I personally just don't. I don't think that UCLA is going to be prepared for Villanova. I think Villanova is somewhat already in that mid-season form, quote unquote, right now. So it's going to be a fun game to watch. But again, I think it'll be a great game. But give me Nova to take the W. So that's all for today. Again, I want to thank all of you for joining me today on episode 1 of the Full 40 podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Really excited to dive into this basketball season. Can't wait to talk to you guys and answer some of your questions. as if you didn't hear the trailer for the show, between the Twitter account and the Instagram account, DMs, just sending regular tweets, it doesn't matter. I promise you I will see it. If you have a question, if you have a comment, something you want me to talk about, I know I didn't hit on enough mid-major teams, something like that, just let me know and I will make sure to incorporate it into the show, because what I want this to be is a show where we just have fun talking about college basketball. No one feels left out. This isn't a Power 5 podcast, I guess you could say. We talk about everybody. So, again, thank all of you for joining me tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your days to be listening to me rant and ramble about my favorite sport. So, peace, and see y'all next Friday.